particularly the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences, whatever it's called, that does the Academy Awards and actually determines the winners of these things, that they clearly are more comfortable, I can certainly say this without fear of contradiction, more comfortable with people of color in those kinds of roles than they are people of color in strong, independent, self-minded, assertive, autonomous, proud and strong black and brown roles. And so whether they derive pleasure from the sexual exploitation piece of it or not, I don't know any more than I know why in the film Deliverance, if the filmmakers got pleasure out of, having Burt Reynolds and these other white characters, sodomized by hillbillies in the woods of Oklahoma. I don't know whether they liked it or not, but I do know there's got to be something that leads a filmmaker to want to tell a story like that, and certainly that leads people to think that is the ultimate performance, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, why is it that these actors and actresses of color seem to only get recognized for roles like that, and it seems that those are the kind of roles that get written for them, and what does that say? To me, those are the questions that we ought to be asking, and I'm more interested in that than trying to probe the psychosexual, sort of tendencies of filmmakers. I just want us as a society to ask why it is that the system produces that kind of work and that kind of recognition, as opposed to other types of work and other types of recognition. But I can't speak to their psychological state. I have no idea.
I can only suspect about the motivations of the filmmakers, but I can, again, same thing that I do with your work. I look at the end result. The end result, a non-white actress, specifically a black actress, never wins the Academy Award for Best Actress. That just never happens. Hattie McDaniel last time. It just does not happen. I think that is extraordinarily important and symbolic that a black actress is given the highest award from white people in Hollywood, suspected racists, for engaging in sexual intercourse with a racist who murdered her husband in an incredibly degrading manner that you say, where she's dependent on this white person who has exhibited explicitly racist tendencies in the film. This is what we award and praise her for. That is extraordinary, and I really feel you skirted the issue, pun intended, the issue of really honing in on the sexual exploitation that is represented in Monsters Ball and how white people receive that film. And I'm highlighting because I think this is huge. This is huge. The things that I think are very important, I really make an effort to focus on that and call attention to it consistently. You say non-white people not being suspicious of white people is one of your greatest concerns. I don't see you working to highlight that concern. I work consistently to highlight one of my concerns, non-white people engaging in sexual intercourse with white people, because I have seen consistently it has extraordinarily devastating impacts on non-white people, and particularly their ability to be honest about racism. Even from this program, to have a suspected racist come on the program just this past weekend, his lone indicator that racism, white supremacy is on the decline, intermarriage statistics. Hey, white people are okay marrying non-white people. That's his lone indicator that white supremacy is on the decline. When you were on the program in June, I had just talked about sexual intercourse and how non-white people confuse this with progress because they can have sex with white people, marry white people. Had a caller, Mr. Dave Myers, he's a non-white person, call in and say, I see racism. How come we don't have non-white actors in sexual scenes or dating a white person on television? He called in and said almost on cue, I couldn't have planned it better to have a non-white person call in and say, I don't see progress. I don't see black and white couples on television. This is another area where I say that non-white people are extraordinarily confused about racism, white supremacy, and vulnerable to exploitation, just like Halle Berry. I would play a clip. I don't have it. I'll get it for the 21st. That's my view. I want to see what the folks on the line say, and then I want to hear your response, because I really feel if you were really serious about racism, white supremacy, you would be aggressively calling that out. You have a blog. You have a book. I have not seen you make any statement about Monsters Ball. I feel that is extraordinarily important, that film and everything that happened around it, calling attention to that. But to do so, you got to focus on sexual intercourse and how that damages non-white people. Cree, you're on the line. Back of the Bus, you're on the line. And 404, you're on the line. Just about this specifically. If you have something else, you can get that in later. But this specifically, I just want to get your view, and then I'll hear Mr. Wise's response.
Yeah, I'll be concise. I don't see how what you said is illogical. I completely concur.
I agree completely as well. And that's a layup for Mr. Wise, really, like just to address and really highlight to non-white people, if you should suspect all white people of being white supremacists, there's no reason at all for you to be engaging in sexual intercourse with a white person.
And I agree as well.
Okay. Do you all feel this is a major concern? I think you all have listened to the show more than once. Do you all feel this is a major problem that should be talked about seriously and that white people should be stepping up to the plate to address how non-white people are harmed in sexual relationships? Is that something you all can speak on, any of the callers? And then I'll get Mr. Wise.
Absolutely. I do think it is a serious problem that needs addressing.
Do not think there is a greater problem. Know plenty of examples on your show and in my daily activities, people who just can't think straight about racism, white supremacy because they have been in sexual arrangements with white people or are the product of such.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add to it, but it does cause a lot of confusion, as we saw yesterday with the Oreo experience. She was defending slave masters. A person can take on opinions and, just really become very divorced from themselves and confused.
Second time we've had a non-white person on the program defending slave masters. I want to point that out. That's what I mean. This is serious. When you talk about non-white people are not confused, it's offensive. The non-white people that have come on this program and the comments that they've made, I'll make sure to have sound clips when you're here for the 21st. But we've had multiple non-white people on this show, not only defending racists, defending blatant slave masters. And you don't think there's confusion? At any rate, let's hear your response, Mr. Wise.
Well, first of all, I'm not saying there are no people of color who are confused. I was simply saying earlier that I don't think it's accurate to say that non-white peoples collectively are all confused about, and that's why the system still exists. There are individuals, absolutely, who are confused about the system, and some of the folks you just mentioned, I have absolutely no doubt if they're going to defend slave masters, and that's a pretty good example of confusion. So we have no argument there. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. As far as the issue of the riskiness of interracial relationships and sexual relationships and emotional relationships and romantic relationships, I spoke about this last time, and I know ultimately we're going to have a disagreement on it. But I did say, and I think I did, and I've always certainly felt, that there is no question that so long as a system of white supremacy is in place, a person who is a person of color, or as you prefer, a non-white person, should certainly be aware of the intense risk that any close connection, let alone sexual, certainly that, but even, I think, very close friendships and romantic relationships that maybe don't even involve sex, that entails, because there is an inherent risk, absolutely, in that person possibly being hurt, in that person being damaged in the relationship, just as I think it is also true under a system of patriarchy that any woman who engages in any relationship with a man needs to keep in mind the way in which sexism and male domination might hurt them, damage them, target them, and manifest in that relationship. That doesn't mean, however, in the case of race, that I think that it is therefore appropriate to say that at no time is a person capable of having that kind of connection, that kind of relationship, including but not limited to a sexual relationship across racial lines, just like I would not say it is wrong for women under patriarchy to have sexual relationships with men. But I do think there is an issue, and it has to be upfront and addressed, and it has to be something that's looked at honestly by both people in that relationship, and a lot of times it isn't. And I think that's the issue. To me, to make the sort of blanket statement that such relationships are always inappropriate, or the term that I remember you preferring last time, incorrect or somehow damaging, would not be, in my estimation, a fair statement any more than it would be appropriate to say that women should never engage in sexual relationships with men so long as we are in a male-dominated society, which we are. And yet that would be not only a sort of preposterous statement, it would be one that if it were carried to its ultimate conclusion, the species would in all likelihood die out. So I don't think that the system of oppression in place necessarily says what we should and shouldn't do, but it certainly says that we have to be intensely aware of what the risks are and what the dangers are whenever we have relationships in a system of oppression across racial lines, across gender lines, across any lines where that oppression comes into play.
Okay. I'm going to get ready to wrap up since we can do this the 21st. We can make this a nice chunk of the program because I think this is very important. But I do want to point out two critical things. Number one, the blog Bandung 2, he posted the Oreo experience and her video, White People to the Rescue. He also was the person who tipped me about Dr. Martin Kevorkian, so he has had a lot of helpful information. He has a term on his blog called conflation, and he says that this, he believes, is a refined racist tactic when white people will speak about racism and then they will reel in patriarchy and capitalism and homophobia and all these other things to create confusion. That's his term, to create confusion amongst the non-white people that they talk to. I think this has been demonstrated when Dr. Peggy McIntosh, suspected racist, was on the program this summer, consistently bringing in sexism and other so-called isms to dilute the discussion, which is supposed to be focused on racism, white supremacy. That's one. And two, even though I think Mr. Wise could have been much clearer, I mean, he's incredibly informed about racism, white supremacy, much more so than Mr. Fuller says, millions of black people, and I wholeheartedly agree. Even what he just said, I give that like a C minus. What he just said, I'll give it a C minus in terms of the caution that non-white people need to have about sexual relationships under the system of white supremacy with white people. I don't hear white people even saying that. I hear them saying, you're racist if you don't want to have sexual relationships with white people. You're crazy. You're racist. Something's wrong with you if you're saying anything that sounds like non-white people should not engage in sexual intercourse with white people under the system of white supremacy. Even you saying that would be a significant upgrade over the foolishness that I hear from white people talking about racism when the topic of sexual intercourse comes up. I definitely want to continue this conversation, 21st, continue this conversation because it's important. Malcolm X talked about this consistently. He was calling out Lena Horne, Lorraine Hansberry, other individuals, Harry Belafonte, who were engaged in sexual relationships with white people. This is a major problem. It's been evidenced on this program consistently, even with Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. I would play the sound clip of him saying lotion for the skin if my switchboard wasn't jammed, but it's been evidenced on this program. It's blazoned all over Hollywood, and I think the people who called in have also seen this. They are all non-white victims of white supremacy, but this is incredibly important. I would love to continue this 21st, and homosexual activity, because that ties right in, and I also think that's important, getting your views that homosexual activity under the system of white supremacy could not be a response to racism, white supremacy. I also think that is very important. I hope we'll focus time on that for the February 21st program. Did anybody on the line have any comments? And I'll give Mr. Wise the last word before we close out. Any of the callers, did you have anything you wanted to say before we wrap the program up? Anybody? 404 Cree, back of the bus.
I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to the 21st when the conversation can continue.
Likewise.
Four oh four, are you still there? Okay, we might have lost her. Groovy. Mr. Wise, until the 21st, I will give you the last word. If you have any thoughts you would like to share before we sign out, or anything you would like to let people know where you're going to be speaking between now and the 21st.
Well, all I'd really want to say is I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and like I said earlier, even though we obviously get into it a bit, I do agree with you. Ultimately, it is business, and I have great respect for what you're trying to do and the kind of message and information you're trying to get out, even when I disagree with it. And I